Welcome to another episode of Vinyl Tales, where we spin tales about vinyl. I'm Brandon, and today I've got some songs off of an album that the album is pretty well known, and the artist is known for actually having some pretty good talent as far as writing his own songs. The first one is a song that was written about horses and became an unofficial anthem for a famous event. The next is a tribute to his own father, but was written in a way that it connects with everyone. And finally, the third and last one is a song that was written as an autobiography, and it ended up connected to the holiday season. So be sure to watch and listen to all three of these as I tell you the stories and all kinds of fun details on today's episode of Vinyl Tales. The first song that I have for you today was released by Dan Fogelberg on his album The Innocent Age in 1981, but then later released as a single in 1982. First off, we have Run to the Roses. This song has a few things that I want to talk about. To begin with is the name of the song itself. The name of the song, Run for the Roses, is actually another name for the Kentucky Derby. It's mainly about one thing, but can actually be connected to another meaning as well. The second meaning behind the song is life. When Dan Fogelberg was putting this album together, and he decided to make it a dual album, he put this song on the first disc because it represents the coming of age and life itself. And he wanted the album to kind of be like a transition through as you go through life. The other meaning, and the one that's closer to the main meaning of the song, is horses. It's about a young colt growing up and getting the chance to run in the Kentucky Derby. The story behind the song goes as this. Growing up, Dan Fogelberg always loved horses, and he always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby, but he never had a chance. Later on in life, he had moved out to Colorado, and he was raising horses. One day, at his home in Colorado, laying in a hammock and thinking about how he was planning on going to the Kentucky Derby a few weeks later. While laying there, thinking about the Derby and his love for horses, the song just came to him. Dan said that he wrote the song in just 2 days. But now, here's where some discrepancy comes about. Dan Fogelberg debuted this song on a special ABC event that was aired on May 2nd, 1980. This event was called Friday Night Live from the Kentucky Derby, and it was a special preview event for the Derby that was scheduled to take place the next day. The discrepancy, however, is that a lot of people say that ABC actually commissioned Dan Fogelberg to write this song for the Derby and their special. However, that is actually wrong. According to Dan Fogelberg himself, and apparently he used to tell this story quite often, the truth is that no one asked or commissioned him to write the song. He just did it on his own. After it was written and recorded, ABC heard it and wanted to use it for both their preview special and for the Kentucky Derby itself. After ABC used the song for its telecast of the 106th running of the Derby in 1980, the people that were in charge of the Derby itself liked the song. And they liked how the song was about the Derby itself. And so they thought they'd keep it around. And ever since, it's been used as the unofficial theme for the Kentucky Derby. And come time for the running of the Derby, all throughout Kentucky, it's played all over the radios, almost on repeat, even to this day. But to summarize, this song was written because a man loved both horses and the Kentucky Derby. It describes both life itself as well as a young colt growing up and getting the chance to participate in the race. It very quickly made its way to and thus became the unofficial theme for the Kentucky Derby. And that's the first song that I have for you. Up next, I have the next song on the album, immediately following Run for the Roses. So, stay with me for a second. This next song, released by Dan Fogelberg, both on the album and later the same year as a single in 1981, is a very meaningful song. Up next, we have the song Leader of the Band. For this song, we have to go back into not only Dan's life, but also a little into his father's life, Lawrence Fogelberg. Lawrence Fogelberg was from Illinois. He started his journey as a band director at the high school in Peoria, later switching to Pekin. He married his wife, Margaret Irvine, in 1946. At the time, Margaret was a talented singer who was the director of her sorority chorus. And so, he being a band director and she being a talented singer, obviously they were big into music and were a good match for each other. After they got married, Lawrence and Margaret had 3 kids. Dan was the youngest, born in 1951. By the time Dan came around, his dad had moved back to Peoria and was the band director at Bradley University there in town. Now, Dan liked to tell the story about how at only 4 years old, his dad would let him conduct the band. He would let him stand in front of him up at the podium with a little baton, while his dad stood behind him and actually did the conducting. Later on in life, when Dan Fogelberg was in college, he was still in Illinois. He was attending the University of Illinois in Champaign. In the middle of a semester, he decided to drop out of college. He decided he wanted to pursue music instead. Now, when his dad heard of this decision, obviously he was a little disappointed that his son had just dropped out of college. but he still supported him. He told Dan, go ahead and try music for a year. See what happens. See how well it works out. And so, Dan drove out to LA, got himself a record deal, and the rest is history. In the late 1970s, Dan wrote Leader of the Band and originally recorded it for his 1979 album titled Phoenix. But he felt like it was a little too sentimental for the overall mood of the album Phoenix, so he held on to it for a little bit and released it later on The Innocent Age in 1981. The song Leader of the Band is about something that a lot of people have trouble saying. The intimacy of the song allows people to easily connect with it as well as Dan himself. This connection makes the song one of Dan Fogelberg's most enduring and mentioned songs. This song is about a child's love for their father. Dan Fogelberg wrote this song as a tribute for his own father. The name came easily since his father was a band director, or also known as a leader of the band. Since the album was released in August 1981, and the single version of the song was released in December of 81, Dan's father was actually able to hear the song. Before he died in August of 1982, Lawrence Fogelberg gave many interviews because of the song and his connection to it. Obviously, he was proud of what his son had done and the message behind this song. So, to make a long story short, Leader of the Band by Dan Fogelberg was written as a tribute to his father, Lawrence, who at the time that it was written was a band director at the university in Peoria, Illinois. It's about a child's love for his father and has become a very enduring as well as enjoyed song over the years because its intimacy allows the listener to easily connect with it. But don't go away just yet, because I have one more song for you. It's actually the last song on the first record for this album. So stay tuned for just a little bit longer. Released as a single in December 1980, the final song for today is Dan Fogelberg's Same Old Lang Syne. This song is an autobiographical ballad told in first person. It's about the age-old story. A guy, after having been out of school for many years at this point, goes back to his hometown to visit his parents for the holidays. On Christmas Eve, he goes out to the store to pick up some groceries. While he's at the store, he runs into his former high school sweetheart. They greet each other, and they decide to spend some time talking and catching up with each other before they head their separate ways. After they talk for a while, they exchange goodbyes, and they head back to their homes. According to Dan Fogelberg himself, this song is essentially a true story. Dan's story of the real events go like this. In 1975, Dan went home to Peoria, Illinois, to visit his parents for Christmas. On Christmas Eve, Dan was sent to the store to get some whipping cream for Irish coffee, while his old flame was out looking for eggnog. They ended up at the same convenience store and ran into each other. After reuniting, they bought a 6-pack of beers, since the bars were all closed, and they took it back to her car and just talked for a couple hours. When the beers were all gone, they departed each other's company, and Dan went on home. As he was going home, the falling snow turned into rain, just like the last line of the song says. 5 years later, when the song came out, the woman heard it on the radio, and she knew it was about her. She recognized the events and knew instantly that the song was about her and their reunion. However, she kept quiet because Dan refused to actually reveal her identity, and she only came forward after he died to confirm some of the details, because she was afraid that if she came forward before then, that it might negatively impact his marriage. According to her, there are actually 2 inaccuracies in the song. The first is that in the song, she has green eyes, but in reality, she actually has blue. The other change is in the song, her husband is an architect, but in reality, he was actually a PE teacher. The song also has a solid connection to the holiday season and is frequently played on radio stations around the country during that time of year. First, the song itself says that it takes place on Christmas Eve, and it also talks about snow. The last line of the song talks about the snow turning into rain. The other thing that connects this song to the holiday season is actually an old Scottish tune. The song that it references is Auld Lang Syne. Now, Auld Lang Syne, which is referenced in the title of the song, Same Old Lang Syne, is a traditional song that's usually sung on New Year's Eve, close to the midnight toll. It's about saying goodbye to the old year as the new year rolls in. At the end of Same Old Lang Syne, Michael Brecker, or Dr. Sax as he was known, performs Auld Lang Syne on a soprano saxophone, giving the traditional tune a cool, jazzy sound. So to sum it all up, Same Old Lang Syne by Dan Fogelberg was written as an autobiographical ballad about his encounter with an old flame on Christmas Eve and has since become a favorite during the holiday season ever since. And that's all that I have for you today. These 3 songs, I actually did them in order that they're listed on here. They are actually the last 3 tracks on the first record in this dual LP album. And they are 3 of the 4 singles released off of this album. First, we had Run for the Roses, which was written about the Kentucky Derby and a man's love for horses, but ended up becoming the unofficial theme for the Derby itself. Then, we had Leader of the Band, which Dan wrote as a tribute to his dad, but has something about it that just makes it easy for anyone to connect with. And finally, we had Same Old Lang Syne, which was written about a real event in Dan's life, where he ran into an old flame, but the song has since become a Christmas favorite. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any other stories or any other cool facts about, it could be an individual song, it could be a whole album. It doesn't matter what genre it's from. It doesn't matter how old it is. If you've got a cool fact or an interesting story behind any songs or albums, just let me know in the comments and I will look into them. While you're at it, leave a like, maybe subscribe. These videos are a lot of fun for me to put together, and if you enjoy it too, let me know. In the meantime, I am Brandon. This has been another episode of Vinyl Tales, where we spin tales about vinyl. Have a good day. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next one.